Well, hey there. We're in another episode of Worship Leaders Must. Are you excited? I know I am. Should be a good one. And actually, I'm hoping to make it quick because today, when I'm actually recording this, because I record these things in advance, it is about to freeze here in Houston where I live, and I want to get home ASAP. So let's make this as quick as we can. Let's make it a good one. Welcome to Anything Goes, A Journey Home, a place to find hope, encouragement, inspiration, and motivation to do the same on your journeys wherever they may take you. I'm your host, Andrew Geist. And today I want to talk about what worship leaders must do. What must they do? So let's talk about some more of them. For those of you who don't know, I'm a worship leader. I've been a worship leader in churches for 15 years, and it is the only thing I've ever done my whole career. I thought I was going to be in film and television, but God had different plans for me. Thank the Lord. And I'm so grateful to be here with you today for this podcast. So you can trust what I'm saying. After 15 years of experience of working at a small church of about 100 people to about a church of 1,000 people that I'm in now every single week, 2 services, even served at a church of about 600 to 900 people on a Sunday with 3 services, even upwards of 5 services on any given Sunday. It was a lot of experience, and I am just happy to share it with you. So let's get into it. It's probably hard to see here, but 31 degrees in Houston, and it's going to get down to like 27 degrees. So when I said today's episode is going to be quick, I promise you it's going to be pretty quick. But I don't want to just gloss over the topics that I have today because they're good. So the first thing I want to talk about worship leaders must do is they must lead practically. Now, what am I talking about? Practically means don't overcomplicate it. Do not make it this super convoluted thing that has to happen. One of the most effective ways that you can be as a leader is to be on time, punctual, and end early. That's the best way that you can lead. But not only that, if you walk into a culture like I did in the church that I'm at now, where rehearsal is 1 day a week for 45 minutes because your musicians are unbelievably talented and gifted, and they absolutely work hard throughout the week and apply themselves, which is fantastic. Now, are they perfect? No. Do they make mistakes? Of course. And culture has definitely changed, and there's been a lot of things that happened before I arrived here that have resulted in the culture that we have now. But some things have held over. And in that particular scenario, one of the things that I have to be effective at is being practical. And that means getting down to the nitty-gritty of the songs. If it's 5 songs, if it's 3 songs, if it's 4 songs, getting down to this nitty-gritty of what the musicians need and what the vocalists need, and being as assertive as I possibly can in the directions that I give. Other things that you can do is creating processes for your church that are very practical. Maybe a one-stop shop kind of online hub through all kinds of different options out there. There are wikis, there's Notion, there's Obsidian, so many places that you could host a wealth of knowledge and training for your volunteers to access. That's something practical thing you can do. If you're the kind of worship leader who has the time, maybe practicality looks like you actually giving lessons to your musicians, whether that's drumming lessons or guitar lessons or vocal lessons, practical things. It's all about resourcing your team, really, and doing so practically and not overthinking it and making it into this massive mess of a project, but turning it into the most simplest thing that you can. Because the reality is there's people like me, and there are people out there in the world who've created content like worshipministrytraining.com or worshipartistry.com or worshiponline.com. All of these places have created incredible training material that you can access and pay for and use as a service to help you be a better, more practical worship leader. So I encourage you to check those out. The second thing I would encourage you to do, which is part of what I've already talked about, equip and train. So like I said, put together practical resources that are very easy to access, very simple to access, and then equip them to your people. Don't hold on to them. Send them out. Send them out in an email. Maybe it's a monthly email. Maybe you have training days. Maybe you have a midweek rehearsal. That's a perfect time for you to equip and train your people. Now, you can equip your people as musicians, of course, but equipping and training your musicians should also, because we're worship leaders and we may be pastors in some contexts, equip and train our people in spiritual matters as well. That might look like doing a simple devotional every week on a Sunday, or during your midweek rehearsals, or sharing something online. If your accessibility to people is challenging, some places it is. I can tell you that for where I'm at in Katy, Texas, sometimes it's just challenging to get everybody into the same room where I can share something spiritual and touch everybody's life at the same time. But that's what I'm talking about, practical and equipping and training your people. You need to do it in such a way as that fits your culture. If you step into any kind of culture seeking to just turn things over and change things over and make new things, I promise you that what will happen is all the people that you currently have in the ministry that you're serving in, unless you're building from the ground up, you're going to alienate them. You're going to actually cast them off in many respects. Now, don't get me wrong. There are seasons of pruning. There are seasons of times where you need to make changes, and some of those people who perhaps have gone without accountability or haven't heard you be assertive in a way that you should, maybe they leave. And yes, that's a bummer. Nobody likes people leaving church because we're supposed to be a community. We're supposed to gather around each other. But the reality is it happens. And frankly, as I've said before in previous episodes, this is not my church. This is not your church. This is God's church. And that goes for our congregation as well. God sometimes means for congregation members to eventually have a season in which they might go to another church or might experience God in a new and different way. Sometimes that's even changing jobs. Whatever the case may be, train and equip your people practically. Don't overcomplicate it. Use existing material. And don't be afraid to find things and ask your own people what they've used to improve their abilities. Because having buy-in from your people to add materials that they've used to improve themselves actually pours into the next generation and actually creates buy-in for other people who are coming on board to realize, oh, this isn't just Andrew's worship ministry, it's all of our worship ministry, and we are all trying to build each other up. The third thing you need to do well, and you must do well, is you must encourage your people. Now, I want to preface this by saying, like all things in life, too much of a good thing can actually be a bad thing. If I eat a lot of blueberries, probably like a pound of blueberries, I promise you my stomach's not going to be very happy, as will the rest of my digestive system. But boy golly, will my liver be full of antioxidants. That's not necessarily a good thing. But my point is, you can over-encourage your people to the point that you wind up undermining your authority when you need to be assertive. I'm speaking from personal experience, and I'm experiencing it, frankly, a little bit right now. And the truth is, encouraging your people is essential to you as a worship leader because musicians are the most common people to get the most down on themselves, to get the most interactive and engaged with automatic negative thoughts and negative feelings about themselves, that it is a part of your job to lead well by encouraging well. But knowing the line by which you encourage and when you stop encouraging, and when you start expressing the hard truths, the truths of we need to get better. We've made a lot of mistakes. There's been a pattern of mistakes, and we need to rectify that. And there are a lot of ways that you can do that. And depending on your culture and your needs, it's going to look different for each of us. What might work for me is not going to necessarily work for you. I'm in a season right now where I'm trying to develop training materials that are practical, that are easily to access online and can be accessed from anywhere. But at the same time, I'm trying to also encourage people in creating a environment of feedback and hopefully reinvigorating a desire for accountability for their playing. The reality is that many cultures go through seasons where they rise and they fall. And when you're on the rise, it is amazing. But when you're on the backside or you're on the fall, it can feel like you're throwing things at the wall and hoping that they'll stick. And eventually you have to ask yourself, I got to hit pause on all of my throwing things on the wall to see if it sticks and say, what are the fundamentals that I should be encouraging my people to do well, and build from there step by step. For me, one of the basic principles that every musician should have, just on a pure giving a care about the other people in the band around you, is twofold. One, come on time. I don't know why in the music culture there's this thing of musicians always showing up late, but I can promise you it's highly unprofessional, and I can promise you that if you're in the professional world and you show up late, you're not getting paid. So at a minimum, with respect to each other in the band, because we're all working hard, please show up on time. And that's my encouragement for all of you. Encouragements for you worship leaders. If you are showing up late, then you are not being the best example that you could be by showing up on time. And second of all, come prepared. It doesn't matter if you have a midweek rehearsal or you don't have a midweek rehearsal. Being prepared for Sunday is essential to success and essential for defining what excellence looks like in your culture. I'm in a season where excellence is always kind of on the front of our vision all the time. But it's something we don't achieve as consistently as I would like to. And it all starts from that basis foundation of show up prepared because other people show up prepared. And if you don't show up prepared, then you, as the leader, are actually undermining the success of your team, as well as them feeling a lack of distrust towards you, because by you not being prepared and not knowing where a song is going or the direction it should be going or where it's coming from, frankly, just having it internalized inside of you, your team is going to feel just as lost as you are because you don't know your music and you're not prepared. So my encouragement to you is be prepared, but on top of that, show up on time and set that example. And don't be afraid of over-communicating it in an encouraging way to your people. And I promise you, that is the foundation for success in building consistent and excellent culture in your church. So I want you to do something. Ask yourself the question, which of these areas do you need to work on? Do you need to work on the way that you practically lead? Leading in a practical way, a way that makes sense, a way that's consistent, a way that does not require an insane amount of effort on your part, but is simple and repeatable. Do you need to work on that? Do you need to work on your equipping and your training? Have you thought about looking into things like worship artistry or worship online or worshipministrytraining.com? Have you thought about any of those things? And do you need to do better at it? And that doesn't just mean being better at training them musically. That also means training them and equipping them spiritually as well. Do you need to do those better? Lastly, do you need to work on encouraging your people well? I know, trust me, it's a tough thing to do to encourage people well because you don't want to look weak and you don't want to look like you're passive or apathetic to your job or to the people around you in such a way as you don't care about them getting better from where they are right now. Do you need to work on being an encourager? Do you need to work on balancing that encouragement with hard truths? do you think that you've lost your way in that path? Ask yourself the question, do I need to work on any of these three? And start working on those things this week. Well, thanks for listening to the podcast today. I know it was a short one, but thank you for sticking with me. For liking and sharing this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, don't forget to click the bell and click to subscribe so that you can get notifications every time I take a journey home. If you'd like to support this podcast, there's a link below and in the show notes. And if you can find, or if you want to find all previous seasons and episodes from this season at ajourneyhome.blog, you can also connect with me at aguysproduction.com or through the socials below and in the show notes. Now let's be kind to each other, show faith, love, and hope to those who need it. Have a great week. I'm going home, and I'm hoping I don't freeze. God bless.